we're more relieved. This is really not a time to be happy, but we feel pretty confident about what's going on. And
that's Joe Currin, speaking back in 2008. At the time, multiple people are charged in relation to the murder of his daughter, Jessica Currin. That trial, 8 years after her death, follows a messy investigation, passed from the Mayfield Police Department to Kentucky State Police, and eventually the Kentucky Bureau of Investigation.
The clothing from the victim was placed in this can. That's the best I recall.
But that's not the whole dress. That's just a piece of the dress.
I don't recall. Like I said, that's been since 2000.
Covering the trial, a rookie reporter at the very beginning of her career.
Both witness lists are extremely long for the defense and prosecution, and then you have to go through 8 years of evidence, and so this trial is still expected to take at least 3 weeks. In Hickman County, Kentucky, Jennifer Horbelt, WPSD News Channel 6.
Jen says she knew the weight of the story even then.
People are going to go home and they're going to live with what happens.
Right.
And how we cover it, frankly, they're going to live with that.
Chad Darnell was the man behind the camera for much of the trial.
We streamed this. And so this was one of the, if not the first, big event that we streamed.
It's the only murder case I've ever worked in where, I can't tell you 100% what happened here.
That's Emily Rourke. Today, she's a partner at Bryant Law Firm in Paducah. In 2008, she was co-counsel for the defense of Jeffrey Burton, one of the people on trial in relation to Currin's murder.
I think that case is so botched and such a mess that wherever the truth is and whatever the truth is, it is lost, and it's completely lost.
Now, a quarter century after the death of Jessica Currin, Joe Currin is pushing for the freedom of the man convicted in his daughter's murder. And the case is back in court.
I was shaking all over, just crying, just like, please tell the truth. Oh my God, please tell the truth. This one in my life.
Y'all should have said this years ago.
This week on the Crossroads Suncast, the history and future of a case that stunned a small Kentucky community, and that's now capturing the attention of the nation. I'm Bryce Patterson.
We never know how things are going to go in life, so we just have to take it one day at a time.
This episode contains descriptions of violence and references to sexual assault. Jessica Currin was reported missing in July 2000. She was 18 years old, the young mother of a 7-month-old infant. Her body was found badly burned and decomposing behind Mayfield Middle School on August 1st. The details of the night Currin disappeared are hazy. We'll come back to the account used in the 2008 trial in just a moment. The case is handled by the Mayfield Police Department and a rookie investigator on his first case of that kind, Tim Fortner. The issues start right away. Mayfield PD makes serious mistakes at the crime scene by not preserving key evidence.
It makes all the difference in the world of who could have or could not have murdered her. And if we knew the exact time of death and maybe some of the things like the gnats and that kind of thing could have told us that more. The fact that her panties were preserved is just unbelievable.
2 men are initially charged in the case, Jeremy Adams and Carlos Lolo Saxton. Jeremy Adams, the father of Jessica Currin's infant son. Carlos Saxton is her last known boyfriend. Here's Emily Rourke.
2 people were charged first, Carlos and Jeremy. And the way it was dismissed is kind of unheard of. I mean, I can't tell you, and I've done hundreds and hundreds and sat through thousands and thousands, because when you go to criminal court, you don't just hear your case. I mean, you probably sat through it with your job. You hear hundreds of other cases. I've never seen a murder case dismissed, and it was without prejudice, so they could have brought it back. But seeing a murder case dismissed like that, and the judge, it was a very bold thing for him to do.
The case is thrown out because of issues with Mayfield PD's evidence. Dismissing the case without prejudice leaves the door open for future prosecution. In the case of Adams and Saxton, that never happened. Rourke says the judge in the case was harsh.
They said, I have never seen a case so encumbered with problems, and I hope never to see one again.
Maggie Freeling is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. She spent more than 2 years working on Season 3 of the Bone Valley podcast, which focuses on Currin's murder and the conviction of Quincy Cross. She says The issues from the very beginning are what got her interested in the case.
There were 2 people arrested, charged, and their charges were dropped because of mishandling of evidence. Immediately, I go, there is something going on. In fairness, this was, 2000, but it was a mess.
The case goes cold, moving from the Mayfield Police Department to Kentucky State Police and eventually to the Kentucky Bureau of Investigation, an organization founded in 2004. During that period, Susan Galbreth enters the story.
In my opinion, we know exactly who killed Jessica Currin. We know how it happened. We know. And there's a lot of people that are feeling comfortable right now because they think they've got away with it, but they haven't.
A housewife living in Mayfield with no background in journalism or law enforcement, Galbreth starts investigating the case herself. Here's how Maggie Freeling described Galbreth based on her research.
Off the bat, we feel bad for Susan, right? She was a sad woman at this really sad time in her life, just like looking for purpose. I think we can all relate to that. She was out of a bad marriage. Things were just terrible. But the purpose she found, it just, she's the citizen sleuth. She wants to solve this murder.
Eventually, Galbreth starts partnering with law enforcement. Her methods are unorthodox and problematic.
She's interviewing people under false pretenses. She was telling Quincy's sister that she wanted to help with the computer or something, and then suddenly is in the house of Quincy, wired up, interviewing him. It's those aren't appropriate methods for any kind of law enforcement, journalists, false pretenses. But Susan is just doing this, and the police are like, cool, we'll take it.
Her story is brought to an international audience through a partnership with BBC journalist Tom Mangold, who comes to Mayfield to cover the case and Susan after she emails him asking for help.
Tom legitimizes Susan. He kind of gives her this platform as a journalist. I don't think there could have been a Susan without a Tom, and I don't know if there could have been a Tom without a Susan. They all kind of fed off with each other.
Galbreth and Mangold moved the investigation away from Adams and Saxton, focusing in on a new suspect. Freeling says, in her research for Bone Valley, she found a potential reason for that shift. Galbraith's close friendship with the mother of Jeremy Adams. Remember, he's believed to be the father of Jessica Currin's son and one of the 2 men initially charged in the murder. Though Galbreth said she and his mother were only acquaintances, new emails reveal a much deeper friendship. Galbreth's partnership with law enforcement leads to a theory of the case with completely different suspects. Those same emails paint a picture of Galbreth and Mangold's relationship. And Maggie says they raise questions about their credibility.
In one of the emails, Tom's talking about how movie deals are being offered, and he says to Susan, I'm gonna make you famous yet. So it just seems through these emails there was a motive other than solving this. There's money. Later they start talking about Susan's estate when she dies, right? And the whole thing just seemed like this was a great story for them. And it is a story, but they very much forgot there were human lives involved.
In 2007, Galbreth receives a Kentucky Citizenship Award for her work. That's after the arrests of multiple suspects, but before there are any convictions. Prior to Galbreth's involvement, investigators found no evidence that Currin had been sexually assaulted. That changes with the testimony given in the 2008 trial. That trial is moved from Graves County to Hickman County in Clinton. But Emily Rourke says the location change wasn't far enough.
It should have been moved much further. It probably should have been moved outside the viewing of WPSD. And that, I think, is what we argued. Because so many people knew about this case from 2000, followed it, and WPSD does a good job, right? So it just, I don't know that you could get a fair jury anywhere within the WPSD viewing area.
Jen and Chad say the courtroom was an intimate, emotionally charged space.
I did anticipate it, but I had just never been around something like that where all of the players from something that was so impactful, such a lingering story in the minds and hearts of people locally, to have them all in the same room and facing each other and seeing
Small courtroom.
Oh, small courtroom. So they're not far from each other. Seeing, Jessica Currin's family, Quincy Cross's family, all of the law enforcement agents who were involved and had worked it through the years. And it became personal for a lot of them, too.
Victoria Caldwell was just 15 at the time of the murder, and she becomes the prosecution's star witness in 2008. Here's the story she tells over the course of the trial. Victoria says she was hanging out with some other Mayfield teens on a July night in 2000. That includes Jessica Currin and Currin's cousin, Venetia Stubblefield. Victoria Caldwell says they got into a car with her older cousin, Tamara Caldwell, Tamara's boyfriend, Quincy Cross, and Jeff Burton, a boy they knew from school. Victoria says they get high in the car, taking a range of drugs. And her cousin Tamara and Tamara's boyfriend Quincy start touching Jessica in the car, against Currin's will. At the driveway of Jeff Burton's house, Victoria Caldwell says Cross reaches under the seat and pulls out a small bat and hits Jessica on the head with it. They carry Currin into the house, unconscious. In Victoria's telling, her cousin Tamara helps the two men to sexually assault and beat Jessica. When Currin starts to wake up, Victoria says Cross hit her in the head with a ratchet. Then,
What did he do with the belt, Victoria?
He put it around her neck.
He put it around her neck. Then what did he do with it?
He started choking her.
once Currin was dead, Victoria Caldwell says Cross told the girls to perform sexual acts on Currin's body to implicate them in the murder. Jessica's body is left in Jeff Burton's garage for days, until they take the body to the middle school to dump and burn it. Two others, Austin Leach and Isaac Benjamin, are also indicted for helping to burn Jessica Currin's body. A key piece of evidence at trial, a journal Victoria Caldwell says she kept at the time, with this entry.
It says, "Damn, they found the body. I hope they don't find out it was us. Hugh is nowhere to be found. Jeff don't want to talk to me."
A forensic chemist testified that the ink didn't match any known ink commercially available in the US in 2000, but said there were numerous reasons that could be the case. It's important to note, while Venetia Stubblefield testified to the same basic story, key details were different. Shifting testimony on the stand is a running theme.
Can any of us remember what we were doing July 29th, 2000? I can't, because I didn't murder anybody that night. And so that's, just something I think that viewers should think about, But if you can't get on the stand and swear on the Bible where you were on July 29th, 2000, it makes it more difficult.
Another witness, Victoria Caldwell's sister, testifies, but recants within the same trial.
On the stand, Rosie Christ, one of my heroes, in this case, says, "You made me lie, and I don't care if you're going to charge me with perjury."
That's a central theme of Bone Valley's reporting. Aggressive interview techniques by investigators from the Kentucky Bureau of Investigation, with grueling, hours-long interrogations.
Those two guys never had a homicide before, and the tactics they used were kind of like what you see with narcotics cops, because that's what they were. It's, intense interrogations. It's threatening. Some of these women claim, they were physically touched by these detectives in the room. Tapes were turned on and off. Just practices I've never seen. And what they said was they were being threatened. These cops ingratiated themselves with these young women who, many of them, come from incredibly traumatic home lives, backgrounds.
Those interviews happened behind closed doors in a Paducah hotel and without lawyers for the witnesses there. Maggie says investigators played good cop, bad cop, with a focus on the women's vulnerabilities. These are women with a history of sexual exploitation and drug abuse.
She's this scrawny little wiry kid, and her hands are just like this, and she is slumped for hours, just like being berated by the most grotesque questions by these adult men. These tactics the KBI used was really trying to understand who these women were, to then, what I believe, take advantage of them and use it to their benefit, saying, "We know you're a drug addict. We'll give you $100 if you can get someone to do this." Great. Rosie Christ admits she would have done anything for $100.
The use of public money in relation to these witnesses is a key issue.
Victoria Caldwell was placed in this witness protection, which seemed more like a glorified, what she says is they basically paid her to continue to tell the same story.
Here's Jeffrey Burton speaking to us after a court hearing on October 23rd.
Something I didn't realize until I listened to this podcast recently is I'm just thinking about these people that they lied on me and ruined my life. But now I'm coming to understand a little bit that they're potentially victims as well.
So here's where the case lands. Quincy Cross is sentenced to life in prison without chance of parole. Victoria Caldwell eventually agreed to 5 years in prison. Venetia Stubblefield, 7 years. Tamara Caldwell took a plea deal, sentenced to 10 years. Jeff Burton also took a plea, sentenced to 15 years. Both of those are Alfred pleas, meaning the plaintiff doesn't admit guilt, but accepts that there is enough evidence to convict. Here's Jeffrey Burton reflecting on his decision to take the plea deal.
Well, I'm still expecting to go home because I know the whole thing's a lie. The main thing is I felt like there's going to be the same thing to me that they did to Quincy. And I was trying to figure out some way I could salvage some type of life for myself.
Emily Rourke, remember, she represented Burton at the trial, tells me the guilty verdict and life sentence for Quincy Cross had a major impact on their defense strategy.
They always saw Quincy as the lead player. And so they wanted to try him first and then use his statements if he got convicted against the other defendants. Jeff always had every intention of going to trial, but it becomes very scary at that point because, Jeff took a 15-year offer, has been out for 10 years, and Quincy is still looking at a lot of time. He was young. He didn't want to spend the rest of his life in prison.
Tamara tells a similar story.
I wanted to go home. I wanted to come home with my kids. They were telling me that I was never going to get to see them, but they were going to ship me up the river and this and that. I took that plea because I wanted to come home with my kids, my family.
Today, Quincy Cross is the only member of the group remaining in prison. In the intervening time, Joe Currin, Jessica Currin's dad, has come to believe that Quincy Cross is innocent and formed an unlikely friendship.
A lot of people call us the odd couple because we wanted the same thing. I mean, he wanted justice for his daughter. I want justice for my son.
That's David Cross, Quincy Cross's dad.
We are friends, and we're just called the odd couple, and that's just the way it is.
Both men have spent years working to find answers and get justice for what happened that night. It's been 17 years since Quincy Cross was sentenced to life in prison, 25 years since Jessica Currin's death. For the Currin family and Tamara and Victoria Caldwell and Venetia Stubblefield and Jeffrey Burton and Quincy Cross and all of their families, the fallout of that night still has a daily impact. The murder and the trial left their imprint on the community and the people covering it.
Months later, you would think about, something would happen around you and it would make you think about the things you heard in the courtroom. And this trial was one of those.
Despite all the intervening years, the cases refused to go away.
Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning, counsel.
Quincy Cross appeared in Graves County Circuit Court via Zoom for a motion hour on October 23rd. It's the latest in a series of appeals over the years. Also present, many familiar faces from the 2008 trial. Tamara Caldwell, Jeffrey Burton, Venetia Stubblefield, Quincy's father, David Cross, and the original prosecutor on the case.
This defendant has raised these issues in 4 post-conviction proceedings.
Barbara Maines Whaley is Kentucky's Assistant Attorney General. In the courtroom on Thursday, as in 2008, she represented the Commonwealth's case against Quincy. The goal for Quincy's team? An evidentiary hearing to discuss new information that has come to light since his last appeal. If approved, it would be a step toward a potential new trial for Quincy Cross. Thursday's hearing had a narrow focus. The evidence presented by Cross's team had to be new and could not have appeared in previous appeals from Cross. And it had to be significant enough that it could have changed the outcome of the 2008 trial.
Okay, assuming that's absolutely true and you can prove it, why does it make a difference?
Judge Tyler Gill shot down a lot of evidence brought by Quincy's team, led by the Kentucky Innocence Project. For context, KIP is an agency within Kentucky's Department of Public Advocacy. It's an organization working within the overall structure of the justice system.
In a review of just one interview with one witness, Venetia Stubblefield, we were able to prove that they had asked her to go off the record. Lee Wise had her lean over so he could whisper something in her ear for her to say and repeat into the recording.
The interview was done before trial. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. But what you say that proves is what was already known at the time of trial.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, we're not going there.
As you can tell, evidence has been a problem in this case from the very beginning, starting with the botched investigation by the Mayfield Police Department. Another issue, the December 2021 tornado that devastated Mayfield.
I mean, I'll never forget the way the trees literally looked. We drove downtown to see the courthouse, and it was just gone.
Miranda Hellman helped to resurrect Quincy Cross's case with the Innocence Project after it went cold during the 2010s. though she has since left the organization.
The entire evidence room was sort of like a concrete block room in the basement. And then after the tornado had hit, they had some plumbing problems in the city, and water just sort of poured into the basement. And that's where we lost quite a bit of evidence. There were at least 2 pieces of evidence in there that we really would have loved to see testing on.
There was never any physical evidence tying Quincy Cross and the others to the murder. The prosecution's case rested on the testimony of Victoria Caldwell and Venetia Stubblefield. Back to the courtroom.
The one thing that's jumped out at me is that there are some new things in the recantation, the 2023 recantations, that have not been raised before.
Judge Gill granted the new evidentiary hearing in the Cross case, with a focus on recanted testimony from both Victoria Caldwell and Venetia Stubblefield. Victoria had recanted previously, then changed her story again. Multiple other witnesses in the case have recanted their testimony as well in the intervening years. Specifically, the judge says he's interested in what he calls the elephant in the room in Victoria's new testimony.
She talks about things that are, if true, would be highly unusual and outrageous, but also really provable. The question is, did she make statements alleging to have children by the investigating officers? With a sexual interaction, she stated that happened before the trial, leading up to the trial. Would a jury be interested in hearing it if that were actually true? Oh, you bet.
Because of their Alfred pleas in the 2008 trial, he chose not to allow Jeffrey Burton or Tamara Caldwell to testify in the upcoming hearing, set for November 25th and 26th. Judge Gill also highlighted the fragility of the witnesses taking the stand in the upcoming hearing.
And they've got some mental disadvantages. One of them may have a low IQ. It's been stated 60 IQ. I don't know what test they did or how they came up with that. The other one, in her own statement, says she's had strokes. And listening to that telephone call, you don't know whether the person speaking is mentally okay or not. You're good attorneys, and I'm glad you're biased. You're supposed to be biased. You're biased towards Mr. Cross. State's biased towards the state's interests. Nobody is looking out after these witnesses that are going to be called.
The Kentucky Innocence Project is housed in the same government agency as the Public Defender's Office. Because Kip is already representing Quincy Cross, Judge Gill recommended looking elsewhere to find attorneys for Victoria Caldwell and Venetia Stubblefield. In testifying, they risk admitting to past perjury. The result could be 1 to 5 years in prison. There was a lot of hope in the parking lot outside of the temporary courthouse in a strip mall in Mayfield. Jeffrey Burton told us he wished he could testify at the upcoming evidentiary hearing. But even though he can't,
It looks like it potentially is going to blow the case apart, from what I understand. So I'm just very excited for November 25th and 26th.
Here's Tamara Caldwell, also reflecting on the judge's decision not to allow her testimony.
I was upset, but I'm hopeful because I know everything's gonna be okay. That our testimony is gonna be out there.
David Cross, father of Quincy Cross, says the support system behind his son is really important.
You know, I'm hopeful that since we got people on our staff now that really helping us that's coming in from out of town, that we will have some kind of justice.
But it's been a long road.
I refuse to let the system break me because my son is strong and we communicate a lot and we've helped each other hold up. But it's like toting 2,000 pounds on your back every day.
Just minutes before our interview, an intense moment captured by Maggie, where Jeffrey Burton, on his knees on the sidewalk, begs Venetia Stubblefield to tell the truth when she testifies.
Please stop.
This
Please
is
stop.
all
And
right. Well, I thank
you've
you.
always been my friend. You know.
We asked Stubblefield for an interview after Thursday's hearing. She declined, but told us we'll hear what she has to say on the 25th. The Currins were not present for the hearing, but David Cross had some words for his friend.
And say, Mr. Currin, the struggle continues. That's what I would say. But well, we never gonna give up. We never gonna give up.
From the murder in 2000 to the trial in 2008, it's a period of change, a transition between forms of media. Here are Jen and Chad reflecting on the process of covering the trial.
If I'm not mistaken, we're still on videotape, digital videotape,
Yes.
but so we're recording, taking the tapes out, importing it into a computer,
I had forgotten about that.
ingesting it,
Yeah.
turning it around,
Yes.
editing it, sending it back again by a
Yes.
cell phone signal that's not very good.
Yes. And all of that before the court day had ended.
Today, you can see echoes of Susan Galbreth's work as an amateur sleuth, reflected in a whole cottage industry of true crime podcasts. On Bone Valley, Maggie regularly talks with a different citizen sleuth who is invested in clearing Quincy Cross. I asked Maggie how she works to provide ethical true crime coverage.
I think true crime goes really wrong when we don't center people as humans. I think so much of true crime is reduced to victim, perpetrator, crime. And there's so much nuance to that. Everyone is more than the worst thing or the worst deed that happened to them. When we reduce someone to just a victim, it takes away everything about them. When we reduce someone to just a murderer, there's so much more to understand. So, in our story, there isn't a villain, right? Jeremy Adams isn't a villain. Victoria Caldwell's not a villain. Even Susan Galbreth isn't really a villain. They're all people who had their own motives, had lives, had things that took them to where they are and did what they did.
You can really feel that humanity in Maggie's coverage.
There was times where I was sitting with Joe and, he would talk about how she loved Tupac. And I felt like she was there. Like I did. He could bring his daughter alive. And that's what I always want listeners to feel like they are with me or with the father. Like I want them to feel that. And that's always been important to me.
I asked Jen and Chad how they think about reporting on a case like this.
Tell the truth, but minimize harm. People needed to know that this was happening. They needed to know the information and they needed to know.
They wanted to know,
They
too.
wanted to know as well.
Yeah.
But again, at the same time, you have real people here that this is their lie. These are their lives. There's going to be some harm in covering it at all because it's dredging everything back up. And I can't imagine what it would be like to sit in a courtroom and, if my child had been killed and this is all going on and there's a camera pointed in my face, So trying to put yourself, I guess, in their shoes and recognize that they have already been so harmed and that we have the potential to harm them again.
When a community, they can't all be there, but they want to know, they want to see that the process is done properly. And if there's not someone there documenting that, showing that, then, how can you trust that it's happened too?
This is a case where a lot of people would say the process was not done properly. Whether or not you believe Quincy Cross and the others are guilty, getting where we are today has taken years and a lot of pain. Here's the question I kept coming back to. Are the failures here examples of a system that works, operating poorly, or the symptoms of a fundamentally broken system? Here's attorney Emily Rourke.
I think the system is the best in the world, but it's still not perfect. And for the system, because I've thought about this a lot with this case, for the system to work, and it can work really well, but for it to work, everybody involved has to be honest, they have to be truthful, and they have to do their job right. And that's the question here, right?
Miranda Hellman, who helped resurrect Quincy's case with the Innocence Project, says the issues run much deeper.
It's a system I know at every level. I know, it in from trial in a misdemeanor, a DUI case, all the way up to a capital murder case. And I can give you 100 examples of this system just not working. Even when the person's not innocent, the system is not working. I think that Quincy's case is what I call a perfect storm. I think that it's a teaching case, right? It has every issue I could ever imagine in a case. And it doesn't mean that this makes this case special, unfortunately. It really is unfortunate that I've seen it and it'd be just as prominent in many, many other cases.
Here's Maggie.
I think it was set up to work the way it is working, and that's to put someone in prison and make that conviction final. And I don't know if it was like that in 2000, but at least now, performance matters. What is your closure rate? What is your conviction rate? Are these cases just falling through, or are you getting them through court in the conviction? So I think it's working exactly how it's supposed to.
Seems like it's easy to get incarcerated, but really hard to get out.
Reporting for this episode by Ariana Allen, Ben Overby, and me. Video and sound by Mason Watkins, Jaden Sanders, and Adam Stump. With pool camera video of Thursday's court date, courtesy of ABC 2020. Archival work by Jason Thomason. If you'd like to learn more about the Currin case, Bone Valley Season 3 is a phenomenal deep dive. Thanks so much to Maggie for taking the time to talk to us. And thank you for listening.